Most people think a boundary is a no. Most people think a
Mm,
boundary is a I can't, I won't, I'm not going to. It's a big not. But the truth is, an unapologetic boundary is, hey, this is what works for me. Does that work for you? Hey, I love this. Can we do it this way? There's no, I'm sorry, I want it like this. I'm sorry, but let me interrupt. I'm sorry, but let me ask for something that I need or want. The apology is usually that thing where we think we're coming from behind. We think we've
mm.
got something to feel sorry for, apologize for, when it's like, hey, I prefer this. Can we make this work? That's a boundary. And most people, they don't think of a boundary in those terms.
Hi, welcome to Livin the Rhythm. I'm your host, Pam Reyes, and this show is all about helping you find the rhythm of life that is unique to you. Because when you align what you do with who you are, something really powerful happens. You begin to live with more freedom, confidence, and joy, and that's your personal power. Today, I am super excited to introduce you to a dear friend of mine, Theresa Byrne. She is an award-winning mindset and boundary expert, recognized as Mindset Coach of the Year for 2 years in a row, mind you, a pioneering martial arts master with 8 black belts, and the first woman to earn a master instructor rank in her system. Theresa brings a unique blend of discipline and insight. Her TED Talk, The Dangers of the Inner Bully, has inspired more than 500,000 viewers worldwide and was named one of Thrive Global's top 10 most meaningful talks. And with a background in neuroscience and positive intelligence coaching, Theresa created the InPower method to help high achievers break free from burnout, self-sabotage, and people-pleasing. She combined brain science, martial arts, and intuition to teach how to own your energy, you'll see why, regulate your nervous system, and set unapologetic boundaries to create true freedom. There is so much in all of that and in what you do that I cannot wait to unpack. So today we're talking about boundaries. Let's start with unapologetic boundaries. What do you mean by that? And how does it create freedom? It almost sounds counterintuitive. Do share.
Most people think a boundary is a no. Most people think a
Mm,
boundary is a I can't, I won't, I'm not going to. It's a big not. But the truth is, an unapologetic boundary is, hey, this is what works for me. Does that work for you? Hey, I love this. Can we do it this way? There's no, I'm sorry, I want it like this. I'm sorry, but let me interrupt. I'm sorry, but let me ask for something that I need or want. The apology is usually that thing where we think we're coming from behind. We think we've
mm.
got something to feel sorry for, apologize for, when it's like, hey, I prefer this. Can we make this work? That's a boundary. And most people, they don't think of a boundary in those terms.
Yeah, it's interesting. So now the audience can see the energy that it brings, right? Because Theresa brings tons of energy. This is what I love. And the unapologetic part of it. Now, let me just go back for like maybe 3 or 4 years. Theresa and I have been working together and co-leading a group through positive intelligence, which has been amazing. One of the things that I absolutely love about Theresa in co-leading all of this is that Theresa has got this energy about her that having many years in corporate America, I stifled a lot because I heard growing up, sit still, just put a lid on it. And because I have a lot of energy as well, what I love about what you're talking about, Theresa, is the unapologetic piece of it. It's not an in your face, but it's allowing us to embody who we truly are unapologetically. So that way we're not, like you said, not coming from behind and saying, sorry, sorry, sorry. We totally minimize ourselves and we don't even realize it. So I don't know if that's always been your nature. Tell us a little bit about how you've come into that, really owning your energy and owning the boundary. So pull that apart and unpack the boundary piece of it a little bit.
Sure. So I grew up in a household. I don't know anyone who's grown up in a household that was like super healthy. And I learned all these great things. And I had such good role models. My God, my life was fantastical. But thank goodness, because coaches and therapists get a chance to work with people because we're still processing what happened as kids. But the environment that I grew up in, differently than some people, I knew it was wrong. I knew it wasn't okay to be unkind. My father was incredibly mean and negative and
Mm,
angry, and there was a lot of chaos. He was he was an actual drill sergeant, and I was a horrible little soldier. But it was easier for me to take the brunt of his upset than to watch my mom or my brother get it. So I would often protect them, you know, and steer the anger toward myself because it hurt me more to watch someone else being hurt. And I developed very clear this isn't okay. And I'll be 100% honest. That is how we and define a boundary. This isn't okay, or this isn't for me.
mm,
We go through life and then we butt up against something, and that shows us like a tributary or like a river or like a lake. That shows us the boundary. And it doesn't mean that where the lake hits the rock is wrong. It's just like, oh, there's a boundary there. So I'm growing up and I knew that it wasn't okay.
yeah.
And for some people, you grow up in an environment, you're like, oh, this is what we think is okay. No, no, no. I knew it wasn't healthy. And I knew to protect my own sanity, I had to learn how to escape, how to pull myself back, how to limit the amount of vulnerability that I would show because you'd get made fun of or
Mm,
teased for being vulnerable. And I had to learn all of that sort of on the fly. Cut to college, I went in, I knew I wanted to help people access their potential. I just didn't know what it looked like yet.
yeah.
And I'm studying social work, and there's hardly anything on boundaries. And I was speaking in a conference last week with a behavioral scientist, PhD, and she's like, I don't even remember studying boundaries. There was nothing about boundaries in psychology or in
No.
behavioral science. And who do we go to, Pam? Like, oh, you know what? I'm really struggling in my relationships, blah, 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 blah. Who do we go to for help with our boundaries? Is a therapist, a
Right.
psychiatrist. And we don't have, there was not training in that. But we, as, lay people would assume that there was training in that. So I learned very little about boundaries, but having known it as a kid, I knew what was okay and what wasn't okay. Now, I didn't apply it to every area of my life. But then when I started studying martial arts, here's the beauty. When you're partnered with somebody, just like Pam and I are partnered right now, I'm reacting and interacting with her. You know, if she asks me a deeper question, then I'm going to go into that. In martial arts, it's like, okay, slow that down, or you can go a little harder here, or let's try that again. There's a constant communication. And I realized that's what a boundary is. It's a communicated place.
Mm,
Imagine that we're all amorphous. We have no lines, anything. We're just all these big amorphous beings. We wouldn't know where we begin and where someone else begins. We wouldn't know where
mm,
we end, where they begin. Like there would be no clear delineation. So
right.
a boundary is really that opportunity to say, these are part of the lines that make me up. These are my values. This is what I like, what I want, who I am, my quirks. They're
Yeah.
all boundaries.
Yeah.
So when I say boundaries are everything, it kind of makes more sense now, I think.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Because I don't think we had that language years and years ago. Like when I was going through school, there was none of that. The one I heard boundaries from is Dr. Henry Cloud. And he's the one who really talked about, he has the book on boundaries. But I
Is it very good?
remember,
Yeah.
I'm going to take this as my own analogy here as having kids, and my oldest who's 28 now. But when he was little, we lived next door to a dear friend of mine who had a son a couple of years older than my son. And he would come over and he would literally bounce off the walls. And I'd say to my friends, what do you do? Uh, we just let him do what he wants to do. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's too late. Now it's 4 or 5 or whatever it was. And I was like, no, because sometimes when we grow up with a lot of restriction, of course, you said your dad was in the military. And so it's like a lot of restrictions. Some people rebel, right? But
Yep.
what the real true thing is that we need boundaries. I used to tell my boys, consider me as the bumpers in the bowling alley. You've got to know where you can push. And the whole thing is like when we're raising kids, it's like, okay, you're only so much old and there's certain things that you can and cannot do. I'm not going to allow you because you don't have the wisdom and the wherewith to know to keep out of danger. And as they grow, the boundaries get increased more. But as adults, if we don't have boundaries, we don't know, like you said, where do I begin and you end and so forth. The boundaries actually do give us the freedom because I see it more as like a framework in which you can work in. And that in turn actually gives that freedom.
People a boundary framework. It's exactly what I call it. Here's a framework and you can apply it to any situation or anything in your life.
Oh,
And one of the boundaries people don't think of is self boundary. Where do I draw boundaries for myself? For,
go there.
not against. And again, most people teaching boundaries are talking about the no and the stay away and stop. I'm protecting my peace. But the truth of the matter is, what are you protecting? Every no is a yes to something for you.
So to share more about that, when you talked about boundaries for yourself, respecting yourself, what does that look like? And how do you frame that up?
I may feel like I want to stay up till 2 a.m. watching a really great show. I know I will not be functional the next day if I do that. So I gotta parent myself. I'm like, okay, one episode and 2 episodes, whatever the case may be. I may really want to overeat something delicious. I also know I'm gonna feel bad if I do it. I have it in my body later. Boundary. Another one, that a self boundary that people don't often think of, is I need to address the situation. I am uncomfortable. Something's going on and I haven't resolved it in my head yet, but I need to open a conversation with some. That's a self boundary. It's kind of a commitment. The
Mm,
idea of health, all health is a self boundary. I'm going to get X number of steps in. I'm going to play this many games of pickleball. I'm going to lift this many times a week. Those are all self boundaries, are a lot of times the rituals, the practices that we create for
mm.
ourselves. And they're like, this is my safe space. This is my container that helps me function best in the world. And that's where true boundaries come from. They're the bridges to others, but they have to start with a bridge to ourselves.
The boundaries that you're describing about us, it sounds to me like discipline and commitment, which those were like dirty words for me. I like to be like free flowing and I'm spontaneous and all of that. But I recognize that spontaneity and free flowing is not always good. So you call them boundaries. I might call them discipline and commitment. But I like the bound sounds better, right? And I think I shared with you, I just finished the 75 hard not too long ago, and I resisted it at first. But the shift for me after 3 weeks of going, oh, this is so hard. Because like you said, no more watching television. No, for me, it was reading a book or, reading every day, drinking a gallon of water, two workouts a day. I was like, that is so hard. But something
Is it?
shifted for me, and this is what we talk about mindset, right? In a perspective. What shifted after 3 weeks was like, look, I got umpteen more weeks to go. Am I going to resist this and suck my energy? Or am I going to go, no, 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 this is who I am now? So can you share a little bit about that, how you teach your clients and how you teach people to make that switch, whether it's martial arts, because that's that resistance, right? There's some resistance that's good, but then on the other hand, if it's sucking our energy, how do we shift that?
So there's two kinds of stress, and we all throw the word stress around all the time. There's eu stress, and there's distress.
Mm.
Distress is what is overwhelming. It's upsetting. It's too much. It's draining. And that's when we'll see people, clients or ourselves, just like, I can't, I'm done. I can't, I've got no more in me. That's because you've been in a distress situation. Too
Mm.
much cortisol, too much norepinephrine, too much adrenaline running through your body. Eustress is that it's hard, but I'm proud of myself for doing it, or I achieved something. It's like what we use when we grow muscles. You stress a muscle so that the fibers and the tissues repair stronger than they started. And when you start doing, here's my funny thing. If you do hard things yourself, when life throws you hard things, you're like, that all you got? I can do that. I do hard things. I do 4 hard things before breakfast. But it's a whole construct of what do I define as hard and why? And if we have resistance, then we're out of alignment. Resistance is always a message that either I need to process this or I feel unsafe. Because remember, when a river or a lake butts up against a rock, there's resistance. The rock is resistance. It doesn't make the rock bad, but it's
Right.
like, and by the way, water can bowl through a rock. Water bowls through almost anything, but it chooses the path of least resistance. And
Good.
that's where our energy flows as well. So noticing, is that resistance in me? And what is it really? For some of
Mm.
us, we have a rebel archetype that's like, you're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. I'm not gonna, you can't make me. Right. We have to exhibit that in some way just to feel that feeling of freedom. But within the bounds, if I've created my own self boundaries, and my own, I use the word practices, not necessarily discipline. Use the word rituals, not necessarily commitment. Or unless I say I'm committed to health, I'm
Mhm.
committed to my health overarchingly. The idea is some words for each of us. Diet. I do not know anyone that loves the word diet.
You're on or you're off.
You're on, yeah, and that's it. And it's got the word die in it, right? Like, I don't love that.
Oh.
But an eating plan, I've got so many clients that are like, yes, let's talk eating plan. And then if the plan goes awry, you just pick it back up. It's not do or diet. I'm gonna write
Ooh,
that.
write
Trademark
that
that.
down. Yeah. Do you know
Trademark.
the interesting thing is it's so true. It's like it's the words we use and we choose. They either empower us or they disempower us, right? We resist. You talked about, and we've had numerous conversations about things, but external boundaries. You used to teach, and even you do now with martial arts, you teach others to stand strong, protect yourself through martial arts instruction, communication, and psychology. So that's that external boundaries. And it almost feels like, because we've had these conversations, and in the martial arts, because I haven't picked that up myself, it is like a dance, isn't it? Because then you're flowing with boundaries where it's not rock solid. But can you give us a metaphor? Can you give us some sights of like what that looks like? It does
Yeah.
look like
Okay.
it.
HeartMath did some study. HeartMath's done a ton of studies, but I've also studied there's a safety zone for each of us. And I call it basically your safe zone. And it is approximately like 2, 3 feet in front of you. And oddly enough, it's also an arm's distance away from you. And that distance is kind of your, right. That's your protected zone. You do not want people you don't know or like in that zone, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally.
And David Seinfeld would say, "You're a close talker." Whoa.
I use that example all the time. And that is not a negative thing. That's just, this is my space and I choose who gets in.
Right.
We
Mm.
have to have that choice. So martial arts is, if you get into my space, and I have said no, because no is a boundary. It's a verbal boundary. And usually you'll use your body and your face and you will say, have it be a no. If someone crosses that, martial arts teaches us the physicality of what we can do, what we could choose to do.
Mm.
HeartMath says that we have more, even bigger
Space.
array of energy around us. And so boundaries for us, it's not what you keep out, it's what you keep in.
Wait, boundaries is not what you keep out, it's what you keep in. Protecting your safety, your energy. What else?
So I say boundaries keep you safe, they keep you sane, they keep you sacred, and they keep you yourself.
So good. Yeah. And the power of no. And it's so interesting because we talked in your bio about people pleaser. We talk about this through positive intelligence, and people pleasing can be sabotaging or self sabotage talk, as my mother would say, make nice, just sweep it under the rug. But when we over commit to other people and saying yes all the time, then we're breaching our own boundaries, if you will. And no, it's like, I love this. And I forget who, and I'm sure somebody will mention who it is, but no, it's a complete sentence. And then some alternatives. It's like, no, that doesn't work for me. No, not at this time. But when we can have alternatives to it, that it makes a big difference. So you shared that there's a couple of other phrases that you use. Can you run through some of those? Because I think that it's really important practical tools. I don't know about you, but when I first started saying no, at first I was like, ugh. But when I have new language, because people will say, well, don't do that. Don't say that anymore. But we have neural pathways that are like, well, that's a slippery slope. Here's my automatic responses. Let's give a couple of phrases that people can hold on to start now bringing that into their own vocabulary that they can start practicing. So, what knows a full sentence? What are some of the other things?
Well, and let me give you a little basic brain tutelage on that as well. When we're in an adrenal situation, we're not going to think creatively. It's just impossible. The parts of our brain that are activated are not solution oriented and collaborative and strategic and in that way. So having something to fall back on, I call it having boundaries in your back pocket.
Okay.
And I have a whole list of them, but if you can just take 1 or 2, and those are that's my back pocket boundary, and you use that for a while, and then it starts to morph into something else, you own it
Mm,
without anything. So here's what the brain does, without a framework, without a pathway, the brain goes, "Ah,
shocker.
don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to handle this. This is super awkward and uncomfortable." And so giving it a way out, it's the same with self-defense. If I teach someone how to defend themselves, I give them, it's not like that there's like 5 steps. It's like, here's 1 step, 1 next step. That's what you do first. And then you can start to process and think. So my favorites are, "Oh, that's not gonna work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. Thanks for thinking of me. That's not something I'm gonna be able to do." You can also go funny. "Ooh, hard pass on that."
Depending on the personality, sure.
Absolutely. You can say, "Could we do it differently?" Most people don't think of boundaries as an option. So Pam says, "Let's go grab this food." Boundary, no, I'm gluten free and I'm sugar free. I can't eat anything there. I would say, "I'd love to have dinner, love to see you. Could we do this instead? Would this work?" That is actually a boundary. Most people don't think about that.
Mm,
There is the no, and sometimes people liken it to a wall. I like to think of it like I was talking about with our space. It's almost like a shower curtain. You open it, you close it, or it's like the bubble. You step out of the bubble, you close the bubble, and it's see-through because it's always fluid. Boundaries are fluid, and that's the difficulty people have is there's not a this is one boundary. They're different based on the situation, based on your containment, your container, your comfort level. And so if it's someone you don't know very well, you might have a different boundary. And that might look like, "No, I'm good, thanks." And with that hard face too. With someone you care about, it might be like, "This is not a good time for me. Can we look at doing this later in the
mm.
week? Can we?" So offering a choice or an option is also a boundary. But people don't usually think, they always just think no.
I love that because it's not black or white, yes or no. And I love the fact that boundaries can be fluid, right? Like you said, water can go through a rock or actually take the easier way out. On the other hand, it's not take the easier way out, but to take a different route. It also sounds like it's more of it can also be used as a negotiation, right? It's a
Boundaries are
starting point, and then we say, how about this? Because a lot of the times boundaries, people go, "Ugh, boundaries, it's this big conflict. I don't want to go there." It's really, again, this is why we talk about it's a dance. It's a dance. Just because you take 2 step back doesn't mean that you're going backwards. It might be the hustle or the cha-cha or whatever it might be. It's our frame of reference. It's our mindset when we look at it from a fluidity or being able to establish our own priorities and our preferences.
Boundaries are bridges. They're communicating me to myself, me to the world, me to you. They're also the agreements and the negotiations that we have with the world. I have an agreement with you that we're going to treat each other in a certain way or that we will do these certain things. An agreement is a boundary.
Yeah.
It's got the outline. It's a boundary is a contract. It's a negotiation. It's anything that involves communication between 2 people. Boom. That's why I call it a bridge. Some bridges are lot longer and some are really short.
Yeah. 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 So how did you find your rhythm, Teresa? I know that you starting with your martial arts, you had that external boundaries. What was the transition and what share it with us about finding your rhythm, your internal boundaries, your external boundaries? Share a little bit about that. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, I think 2 of the biggest things for me were realizing that A, I was never going to fit in. No matter how hard I tried, I was
Shrinking.
never ever going to fit in. It wasn't going to work. And I don't do well when I try to fit in. So part of it was then encompassing who I am. And that's my quirks, that's my oddities, that's my goofiness, and not making it a weakness. That's a self
Yeah.
boundary. I
Mm.
don't make what's different about me wrong. I will not make what's different about me wrong. If I upset someone, I will apologize. But living in the rhythm means you've got to own your rhythm. You've got
Yeah.
to own who you are. And even the parts that you're like, I don't love that about myself. I'm a little disorganized,
And that's not in my skill set.
right? Exactly. But it's my quirk. Aren't I funny? And I have piles of things. Um, and I think that there's a difference between trying to fix everything and make it different and fit in. So for me, it was about recognizing that there are no weaknesses. Even I've done a lot of television and a movie, and in all of those, there's not a mistake. There's a missed take.
Mm.
Take means we're going to do it again, or we're going to learn from that one. And there, you might do 12 takes. I was doing fight scenes and I don't even know how many. We had different camera angles and we had to do the same fight scene 25 times. And I'm exaggerating, it was probably 20, but that was a take and we'll put it all together. And I think the other part for me that helped me own who I was, I had a car accident in 2 days ago was my anniversary was of the car accident in 2014. And I ended up with a brain injury that required me to step up my boundaries to an even bigger degree.
Mm.
I had to protect myself to heal. And I don't like to think of boundaries as solely protection because I do think that they are bridges and they are a lot
Right.
more, but they're also what you have to fall back on when you need to be safe. And I was unsafe in my own body, in my own head, had to draw big energetic boundaries, time boundaries. In fact, doctors gave me the no TV, no lights, no music, no input. That was almost 2 years of them telling me not to do input. I didn't listen. I'm a rebel.
Well, it's self-preservation, but they wasn't that the catalyst that led you to InPower, like inside out, self-sourcing the power that no one can take away because
Yeah.
you had to learn that. You had to teach yourself more. You talk about the inner bully. Did that mostly crystallize after your accident where it became more of a, oh my gosh, I really need to wrangle this?
Such a great question. More? No, I mean, maybe not more, but I had a decent relationship with the voices in my head, the voice in my head, whatever.
We
Uh,
all have stinking thinking,
well, and I have intuitive thinking. So I have other helpful voices that
right?
voice can hear. And for me, the voice that I could not hear was insidious. It was a lot more about who I needed to be, how I needed to show up. And I remember
Mm.
the first breakdown, the doctor said, you need to stop everything. And how can I stop everything? I have 15 employees, 6,000 square feet of martial arts and fitness studio. I ran 5 programs, 3 of them at a university. How exactly am I supposed to stop? And I remember just bawling and thinking, what value do I have? What good am I?
Mm.
And this really soft, loving voice came in and said, just because you are. But I had set up, whether
Mm.
my inner bully or whatever had set up this must prove. It's like you see those signs that will work for food, must prove for value.
People pleasing, performing. Come on, I did that. Proving, pleasing, performing. Yeah.
And the idea was that I didn't have to do any of that anymore. And then,
Mm.
so that was my big breakthrough. I got that lovely voice. And then the second part was I heard this voice in my head telling me to off myself. And first of all, I do not talk like a 1930s gangster. I'm not going to off myself. But
Mm.
it's a real thing in brain injury, having suicidal ideation. And they ask you when you go to the doctor, are you having thoughts about harming yourself or someone else? Or voices telling you? That was like, boom. How many other people brain injury, vets, NFL players, anyone else who's had, consistent concussions, how many of them end up violent or to themselves or others? And then I did some research. 33% of people who have a brain injury will attempt or
Mm.
contemplate suicide. And I was always very honest about that voice and I wasn't going to do it, but it was there. And I started realizing how often we avoid hearing those voices. We avoid
Mm.
listening to those.
We
That
numb them out with certain things, drugs, alcohol, addictions, and all of that kind of stuff. What did you do to help turn that down? Because we talk about this. Some of those voices the saboteurs are there to protect us to begin with, right? What did you do that helped turn it down, first and foremost, acknowledging?
Right, well, I'm gonna get a little religious on you, but
We're going.
okay with that. So I know the power in fighting and resistance. And the first time I heard that voice, I was like, screw you? Get out of my head. And I get all angry and tell it to kick it out. And then after a while, I know constant fighting is exhausting, even if we're fighting ourselves.
Right.
So it would show up and I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I'm a failure. Yeah, yeah, I'm a burden. Yeah, yeah, I suck. And it doesn't just show up randomly. It's like, and I've got all of this evidentiary support for the fact that you have made mistakes in your life or you've messed up or it brought its own luggage. And so finally I thought, okay, well, what do I do in a situation where I'm coaching someone to deal with a toxic voice or negative voice?
Mm.
And I sort of set up in my head, the voice came at me and I was trying to do a webinar and it was beating me up because I messed some tech up. And this was in 2016, right? Like, no, we weren't, I was, because I wasn't allowed to teach martial arts. I was like, I'm going to figure out something.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out online tech, mess something up. And the voice is like, you'll never get this. And I looked at in my head, I was like, do you really believe that about yourself? That you just suck like that? Do you know God? Do you know light? And the voice was like, we're going to be. And I'm like, God will always take you back. God sees all, knows all, and loves all. You have a place. And because it was a very dark thought,
Yeah.
right? And I kept thinking, bring in the light. And so I just had this whole construct around bringing in light to that voice and taking it out of that it's my head. And that's where people falter. They think that voice that's telling them that they're bad, they're wrong, they're awful. They think it's their brain. It's not.
And it's not them. That's the whole thing, and I
Not
think
us.
is the beauty of this is, like, our thoughts can come and go. But I remember when I first started with positive intelligence, it was really because right through COVID, 2 of my boys had suicide ideation, and they were you can't tell them, "Don't think that way." I mean, of course,
Yeah.
that's how I used to be like, "Oh, just don't think of things." No, 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 that even makes it worse. And so it's teaching them that it is not who they are, but it's a challenge for sure. What's one practical tool or one piece of wisdom that you can share with our audience about
I used it before I knew positive intelligence, but I like the positive intelligence makes it easy to aspect it. Recognize it's not you and recognize that it's coming from inside the house, but it's really outside the house.
Mm.
And being able to separate that out, that whole idea of stinking thinking, which I've taught to kids as young as 3. If a kid can pick up and we used to call it the stinking thinking gremlin. Stinking thinking gremlin is strong in this one, but characterizing it. What other things does it have to it? Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What do you feel like in your body? And that starts to separate it out from the metacognition, out of your cognizant state into something that's external, which then from a subconscious mindset, you can start doing something with. When it's insidious, you can't do anything with it. It just feels
Right.
like it's part of you. So separate out that part of you and learn more about its languaging. Every single one of those, I mean, for me, that voice was different. Suicidal ideation is telling you to hurt yourself, but the inner bully is most likely trying to keep us safe or quiet or whatever. And so separate it out and recognize it's trying to say something because it's scared. Give it something else to play with. Say
Ooh,
something. I always say that. Give it something.
diversion. That's what I do with my boys. Oh, you're all like nasty over here. Well, how about this over here?
I know, look at that. Look at that. Pattern interrupt. Give it something else. So even if if the inner bully shows up in me, now I might do more of a somatic thing. I might do some havening or some tapping or some PQ and just say something to it. Here's the funny the neuroscience piece. It almost doesn't matter what you say, but that you say something and then your brain goes, oh, if you just say, I'm a piece of crap or I'm worthless or I have no value and you don't answer it with something, it just lives on like echoing. But if you say, I'm worthless, I have no value, I'm a piece of crap, and the voice goes, I've done some cool stuff. Your brain goes,
One thing I want to add to that too, Teresa, is the voices in our head. And I'm a big proponent. It's like, it's the enemy, it's the devil trying to get in here. But one thing we have to recognize is whatever we speak out, because a lot of the times people are like, oh my gosh, you don't want to read my thoughts because they're nasty and we're beating ourselves up. But are we actually speaking out what we're thinking? No. But when we're countering it, we have to, the power of the word power of truth, love, and a sound mind really needs to be spoken through our mouth and go, oh, yeah, that's really fun. And maybe even poking fun at it. It's like, that's not true. That's not true. And speaking it out gives so much more power to the stinking thinking in our head.
Well,
Yeah.
at first there was the word. There is much power when we pull something out. It brings it to light. It
Yeah.
allows us to see. Living in the dark, it just scurries
Well,
around.
the enemy's playground, right? Stays in the dark. Bring it out.
Believe enemies. I have different because that would put us
Enemies.
on protection all the time. Dark energies that are not for us, not healthy, not yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
An enemy is like, "Oh, we gotta go fight it," and that's exhausting. It's
Yeah.
exhausting,
Good
but
point.
knowing that there are thoughts that do not serve me, it actually takes the power away. What happens when you give something big power? This is another point of it. Like, when I teach people about narcissistic personality disorders or disordered empathy or sociopaths, the more that we make them powerful, the
Mm.
more power they have. Take it away. People with narcissistic personality disorder, so scared. Every bit of their value is based on what they get from the world or how they appear, which means they have no sense of self. And that is the scariest thing ever. Yeah. I mean, and I've taught many, many self defense classes where we're like predators. I'm like, they're trying to get their thing. Like, they're trying to do their thing and we're going to
Mhm.
stop them. They're not all powerful and they are
Right.
not. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then and making sure, like you said, is that our power comes from within, and it's up to us whether we give it away or not. But it's ours to keep for sure.
We cannot. We give it away. It's never taken from us. We give it away and we can take it back. God gave us everything we ever needed from the factory.
Mhm.
And we also, I believe, signed some soul agreements on what we were going to learn, what we were going to work on. I have this really cute little image too. I had a tumultuous relationship with my father, but I imagine before I was born, me and God and the man who is my father. It's like, you know what? You need to learn how to teach people boundaries, but like from a soul level. Like, you're going to have to learn
Mm.
this lesson. And my dad's soul said, you know what? I'll do that. I'll help you learn that lesson. And I'm sure my soul went, really? You'll do that for me? He's like, yeah, I will do that. I will be a jerk and I will be mean and verbally abusive and emotionally abusive and I'll help you get there. And my soul's like, awesome. I'm going to get that. What if
Yeah.
that is what happens, right?
You know, what a different perspective. What a beautiful metaphor that is, because a lot of the times they say, don't pray for patience because you're not going to get it. God's not going to give you patience. It's going to give you opportunities to practice patience. So that's a great shift to actually go, and look at it from a different perspective. I was like, that's my teacher. Thank you. Wow. And that's the purpose that I have now. So
Mm.
good. So, Teresa, if you could describe your rhythm in one or two words, what would it be?
If I would describe my rhythm, ebb and flow.
And I see that not only in the martial arts, but in who you are, because how you present and the light that you are when you show up every time I do work with you. So, do you have something that, like, if our audience wants to learn more about this and dealing with the inner bully, how can they get in touch with you?
The website is theresabyrne.com, my name. And I have a book called Finding Your Voice in Finding Your Voice. I'm a big fan of not just ideas and thoughts and information, much like Pam is. I'm in like, let's take action. Like,
Yeah.
let's do the next steps. Where do we go from here? Yes, great. And so the
Mm,
book is practical applications because I believe the inner bully is a part of us and the inner warrior is the
mm.
ancient soul directed divine part of ourselves too. So it's all about engaging that inner warrior.
Yeah, and it is when we think of it more of a warrior, I definitely take that stance of like, come on, this is it. I can do hard things, right? I will definitely put the information out there about your new book. Congratulations on that. Thank you so much for being with us, Teresa. And I'm going to leave the audience with something to ponder. So, what if your next pivot isn't really a setback, but a deeper path to purpose? Yeah, think about that. And remember, life is not a race, it's a dance. Find your rhythm and dance. Thank you so much, everyone.